I'd like to call the meeting to order. Let's all stand for the pledge of allegiance.
For which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
So I think the only one not here is Duncan with notice. Student recognition, National Technical Honor Society and Future Business Leaders of America.
Our future business leaders of America, many of them were tied up with games this evening, so we will be doing their recognition at a later date. We're very, very pleased to have our UN Technical Society recognition this evening, and I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Femia to help us do that.
Thank you. I have the privilege of presenting all of you with our honorees. All of our students are in their second year of the Hewitt program. The selection criteria to be honored was to achieve an 87 or D+ average or higher in their program, with a recommendation from their Hewitt teacher and no failing grades in other academic courses. Participation in extracurricular activities, and students were required to write an essay when they applied. Our first student is Taylor Alabreo in the Allied Health Program, working toward the Certified Clinical Medical Assistant exam in May. Interned at Concord Hospital Pediatrics in Belmont and plans to attend Quinnipiac University of Connecticut for nursing. Our next student is Eric Ferdy in the Allied Health Program, working toward a Certified Clinical Medical Assistant exam in May. Intern at a physical therapy office in Meredith, plans to attend UNH for Health Sciences in the fall. Mark Healy is in the second year of plumbing and heating, plans to continue his plumbing training next year, either through Lakes Regional Community College or the 4-year Laconia Academy Plumbing Apprenticeship Program. He plans to continue in a career in plumbing, and he mentioned that he really liked the Hewitt Center. Max Quinn is in his second year of plumbing and heating. He will work as an apprentice this summer at Newfound Plumbing and Heating and plans to continue working next year while enrolling in the 4-year Laconia Academy Plumbing Apprenticeship Program. Thank you. And Abigail Smith enrolled in the LNA program. She took her LNA exam today. Interned at the Taylor Home at Lakes Regional General Hospital. Plans to work as an LNA this summer and will attend the nursing program at PSU this fall.
Quite an accomplishment.
Yes.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Give me that plumber's card.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for coming this evening so that we could have a public recognition with the school board. You're certainly welcome to stay for the rest of the evening, but you certainly don't feel like you have to do that.
The dinging is just people joining the meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
I could probably mute my audio. That might help.
So next up is the public comment section.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I have a short email from one of our residents with 2 questions. The first is basically says, I miss the times when parents could park and go into schools and socialize with other parents before going back
Leave it all.
to classrooms to collect their children. In other words, the pre-COVID pickup routine. And whether or not you anticipate returning to that when conditions allow.
I think those changes were made before COVID, relating to the number of people entering the building at the start of the school day. You know, there are opportunities for families to come and be at the school, but on a daily basis, we're trying to get students organized for learning for the day, and trying to move a substantial amount of traffic. The number of people that we have that come by car to school.
Thank you. Second, is the district still working with Antioch on the subject of equity for teachers workshops? And does that have anything to do with the spirit activities?
So the spirit activity and our Antioch courses are not connected. The equity class ran last summer. I don't believe it's not currently one of the classes being offered.
And
The
finally,
spirit program is separate. That is
That's what
with
I
the
thought.
Department of Justice.
and lastly, wanted to know whether the following book is available in any of the inner libraries.
I couldn't respond to that without.
Okay. Thank you. That was all it was.
Any other public comments?
See none online.
Seeing none. Moving along then, Interlake Student Board Representative update, Riley.
I made it very simple tonight. I have a video from 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, sorry, on the Friday before April break. Interlake Middle High School participated in a spring carnival, kind of in lieu of losing our typical winter carnival activities. And part of that was a lip sync competition among the 4 high school classes. So each class, this is a very laborious process. It started late March, planning for this, and on Friday they got to present it. And I have for you today it's about 10 minutes long, just a compilation of students and staff lip syncing. Oh, that's great. Very interesting. Can you hear that okay?
Yes.
Yes, that's good.
I thought it was gonna come out through this, but it's coming out through your device.
I can turn it up if you want. Oh, wait, but there's more. More?
Oh.
This is the first time in a long time that the staff have put together a list. No, she's got a list.
I'm fine.
She's in the next graduate. She graduated.
Bedford is right.
This is the books again. This kid's back, it's not right. She's a.
I was gonna say, going on the staff of that building. Oh, this
Where is the administrative team?
That's a
We
pretty
do
nervous
the
one.
Charade.
We did charades.
And we did,
Get ready for karaoke night.
It's, we, after a year of missing lip sync, let's do, we didn't get to do it because of COVID. After a year, it was really nice to get back into it. And, you know, the senior class winning was great. It was a great, part of that. So appreciate you guys watching that. Yeah, so.
Thank you for
Thank
putting
you.
that all
Thank you.
together.
That was great.
That's great. Okay, minutes, regular minutes, April 12th.
Here's the.
Motion to
Motion
approve the
to
minutes of April 12th, 2022 as presented. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Current bills payable, general operating expenses, Ms. Taparino.
You have two manifests, manifest 3021 for $593,309, and manifest 3022 for $24,958.
Second one was just insurance refunds.
Correct.
So moved.
Second.
Oh,
Go ahead, Mark. In favor, paying the bills?
Aye.
Thank you.
Superintendent, assistant superintendent report, enrollment information.
So you have the enrollment report, it's attachment 4. We are down 9 students, I'm sorry, a total of, yes, 9 students. We are down 2 from K to 6. We are down 2, 7 to 8. We are down 3 from, I'm sorry, down 5 from 9 to 12. So that is our total of 9. So down 2 K to 6, 2 K 7 through 8, and 5 9 to 12. Nothing significant. They're just changes that people have made.
Financial report.
We have a closed financial report through May 3rd. The adjusted available balance has decreased by $53,963 since your last report. We are working to tighten up as we come towards the end of the year, that the June meeting will have a tighter number.
Staffing update.
So really looking ahead to staffing for next year, we've been underway trying to complete the hiring process for open positions. You have some tonight that the board has requested to act on. The Dean of Learning, we got the process. We had several interviews last week. We are moving forward with 3 candidates moving forward in the process, and the next phase of that will be the beginning of next week. My hope is we'll have a nomination for the board on the 24th for your consideration. We do have an open math position at the middle high school. That is underway with a committee that is hopeful to introduce some candidates. It's a small pool at the end of this week. That is the 1-year position funded through ESSER. So being a 1-year, that does make it a little more of a narrow pool. But we're hopeful that maybe there will be a successful candidate. We are looking for a science teacher position at the middle high school. Our hope is a candidate is being ready to be recommended to my level. So my hope is on the 24th, we will have a nomination for that. We have a part-time physical education teacher at Sandwich Central School. That can be hard to fill because it is a part-time position, but we are actively seeking applications in a special education position at the elementary school. Interlakes Elementary. So people are actively engaged in receiving applications, and we have interview committees working on interviewing candidates, and hopefully as we get closer to the 24th, we'll be able to narrow that list a bit more. And our goal is to have all of these positions that are considered teaching or administrative positions filled by the time school is closed. So, thank you.
Madam Chair, I guess.
Yes.
Questions, how does our recruitment, do we recruit statewide for these positions?
So we do. We use Ed Jobs, and we've been using Indeed as well.
Okay.
Go ahead.
In the past, part of the committee's consideration had to do with individuals with multiple certifications. Is that still an active part of the
So
process?
we still try to, we try to find the best candidate, and oftentimes if people have more than one certification, that provides more flexibility.
Thank you.
So I do believe, interestingly enough, one of the individuals being recommended to me for one of these open positions, has multiple certifications in very different areas.
Charlie, you have a question?
No,
Oh,
it
no,
was
it's Nancy, sorry.
We have the candidates for the Dean of Learning position internal.
So they are all external candidates that are moving forward in the process.
Any other questions? Curriculum review process cycle.
So we have Mrs. Papalardo, our curriculum coordinator here this evening, who I like to think of it as director of learning because she oversees all levels of learning, from 3-year-olds all the way up to well above 60-year-olds. So she's here this evening to talk about the curriculum review process and to back in, I think it was January or February, we had shared with you a document, which was reshared with you. And because of the length of that meeting, didn't go into detail. And so the hope is this evening that Erica can share some insight and provide you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about curriculum.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to bring the meeting back up. I got too many things going on. So meeting's up and then mouse is on your screen. So we're good.
We're good. All right. So thank you for allowing me some time to share a little bit about the curriculum development cycle with you this evening. Essentially, this is a process that enables our educators to be able to be both reflective and also responsive about some of what I would consider to be the most important decisions that we make at the Interlake School District. Oops, there we are. I think I have it back though.
I'm not gonna touch it.
All right, perfect. I've got it now. Thank you. So before digging into the actual cycle, I'd like to just pause to speak about this word curriculum that we use to just have a grounded kind of calibrated understanding of that word. I think we use it a lot and all have varied definitions in our minds. So Merriam-Webster defines curriculum to be kind of a set of courses or a specialty set of courses. And here at Interlakes, we understand that curriculum is just so much more than that. So I kind of present to you this idea that curriculum, when we think about that, we really think about like 2 buckets, if you will. So one bucket being the what. What are the things that we make decisions about that get included in the curriculum? And then the other bucket will be the how. How do we activate that curriculum? So both of those buckets for our purposes are really integrated here in all of the work that we do. So we'll take a few minutes to dig into some of the what. So when we think about those decisions, we really begin with the New Hampshire Department of Education, which sets the minimum standards for our schools in the state of New Hampshire. From there, we do the work of trying to develop a really robust program of studies, which reflects the values of our communities and those competency sets that we aspire to see in the learners who graduate from our school. Beneath that, we turn toward standards. Those standards come from national and state level frameworks, and those standards are written by various experts in the domains, and they've all been vetted by national and state experts. We take those frameworks, and here at Interlakes, we have integrated them and have built our academic competency documents. Those documents articulate all of the competencies that are essentially the blueprint of every decision our teachers make in our school district. Within those documents, we've actually taken the time to look at hundreds upon hundreds of standards and decide which are the most important, which will we prioritize in our learner's journey all the way from kindergarten through grade 12. We use Marzano's taxonomy to then further articulate what we refer to as learning goals. Those are the criteria that we communicate with our learners to help them to understand the difference between a proficient performance level and a proficient with distinction performance level.
Can we ask questions while you're talking? Maybe?
Absolutely.
So when you before on the slide before,
Yes.
I guess, what data are you using?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
My apologies.
Yeah,
I
no
realized
worries.
that. I can share, the reason why I'm doing it here is so I can share it to the public, and I didn't do that, so I took over control. and
No
I
worries,
apologize.
it's all fine.
You should have access now.
It's perfect. I trust you inherently. Where were we?
You're here and
Here.
we're talking about how you make decisions on what curriculum you're gonna offer, right? And so how do you know what are the shortfalls in the district, right? And, you know, what are we good at? Say, which ones am I gonna place priority on? And how do we do that?
It's a great question. So the teachers have collaborated with one another, beginning within their grade level and then across grade levels. So when the decisions are made, which areas will prioritize, it's really looking at it along a continuum. So if a concept might not be prioritized, let's say, for example, in third grade, we really look at that skill over the learner's journey to assure that at some point, it really does become a center star. Does that answer your question?
It kind of does, it doesn't, but I'm worried about that lost student, right? That maybe comes into Interlakes, goes out, comes back in, and didn't get that over a couple of years, right? So how do we make sure that they get that?
So through assessment practices is how our educators will be able to pinpoint and be more analytical about drilling down to those skills.
Okay,
So we have robust assessment practices that, essentially we're pre-assessing students as they're coming into our learning environments to determine where are some of those gaps so that we have that information. Paired with those local assessments, we also use a whole suite of other assessments like the NWEA growth assessment.
okay,
As one example, we also use the SAT suite of assessments. So we have a lot of data that we're analyzing through our work to help determine have we made the best choices
Right.
in prioritizing.
okay. So there's a relief valve, I'll call it, for a student that maybe over a couple of years didn't quite get to where they needed to be. You're able to diagnose and give that curriculum to them, even if it's not mainstream, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Great question.
thank you.
Thank you. So from there, the next kind of layer to the what are all the decisions that we make about resources that we integrate in our school district. So those resources can be things like the programs that we use to instruct math and ELA. They could be things like software applications. They are things like our learning management system. So all of those resources, textbooks, consumables, all of the things that we decide to integrate as resources to interact with our learners. Another click.
Yeah, we're learning that next time we'll do this a different way.
Okay.
It's because I had to admit someone to the meeting, so I had to take over.
Oh,
So there you go.
perfect.
You should
Thank
have it now.
All right, great. So our next kind of layer to the what, I realize the images are super difficult to read, but really this last layer is to speak to kind of that next way that our educators chunk all of that information. So essentially that's done in what we refer to as a pacing guide or a course syllabus to help kind of compartmentalize some of those key concepts. So as we kind of look at all of these points of influence, it's hard to imagine that all of those things contribute to just the what part when we're speaking about curriculum. What we'll dig into now are some of those how pieces, like how we activate curriculum is just as important as the decisions that we make in terms of what we've decided to integrate into our program of studies. So we'll begin with this document. This is really a monumental document which the board approved during the June of 2020. And this document is our design principles document. It outlines all of our philosophical beliefs about grading and reporting and learner recognition. And it really is our go-to living and breathing document that really guides all of our work. Another document that is really fundamental in our practices and helping to determine how we activate our curriculum is the competency-based instruction learning progression. This was developed by a set of teacher leaders here at Interlakes and essentially supports this belief that we have that the more we can be active in the design of everything we make a decision about as an instructional designer, the more engaged our students are. And so the more that will benefit them with heightened levels of proficiency. So we believe that every time we make a decision, whether it's about choosing an instructional strategy, choosing a feedback mechanism, any decision we make, we think about it on this continuum of a decision being more teacher-centered toward learner-centered. And this tool enables us to be really reflective about where we are as practitioners and to set annual goals about how to increase activating instructional design opportunities.
May I ask another question?
Absolutely.
So when you say teacher-centered versus student-centered, I assume it's skill level based, right? And so that means you're changing students with teachers more often so that you match the skill levels correctly to the student level, or what do you mean by that comment?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So thinking more about as a teacher, when I decide, for example, I'd like to have my students engage in a feedback loop with one another about some content that they're learning. I could decide to be very teacher directed with the approach that I use, and I could create the feedback mechanism, assign it to my students, they would complete it and hand it back. So they don't have a whole lot of voice and choice in how they're self-reflecting against the criteria that I want them to provide feedback on. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
And so more learner-centered, I might have them think about, well, here's the rubric that will be used for your final summative assessment. You do the self-assessment and come to me with a goal that you're setting.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So as a classroom teacher, the many decisions are made that are more collaborative. So more of the what are those collaborative pieces where teachers are never really making those decisions independently. It's the how they're activating curriculum, where sometimes those decisions are activated as individuals or perhaps across a grade level within a content area at the department level, more at the middle high school. And all of those variables are extremely important because they impact student success. And so the curriculum review cycle essentially is a place and a time to support our educators to be really analytical about each of those variables that impacts their work with learners. And through this cycle, we bring in also some external consultants, and their role is to be able to provide some current research from the field and some best practices to inject some of that professional learning with our educators so that we can see beyond Interlakes other exciting things that are going on with curriculum development. So to walk you through kind of the process, during year one, the teachers engage in really a reflective exercise looking at all those choices that they've made with resources, with pacing guides, with different decisions they've made about their program of studies. They really think about what is their vision that they want to have as a graduate. Yes, sir.
Just another question. When you say teachers, all teachers in the district, or are we selecting, teachers from each grade or building? Is this like a simplified rollout or a rollout all over?
It's another great question. Thank you. So when I designed the review cycle, it was with the intent of it really being a K-12 review. This year is our first year of implementing it. So a lot of what's going on is still theoretical and aspirational. And so as we're implementing, we're learning a lot about, I don't know that we could have done K-12 this year with all of the constraints and things that we've had. So this year, it's really been centered on just 7-12 with social studies and ELA.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So the teachers engage in this analysis of, what choices have I made? How are we spending funds? Just gathering all of those resources and pulling them together, working with consultants to explore recent research in the field and best practices. And at the end of that process, really coming to terms with, well, what do we think we should do with this information now? And creating a proposal. essentially pulling all of their ideas and learnings together. During year 2, the idea is that they're starting to implement some of those ideas. And obviously that kind of depends upon just how wild their ideas are and how expansive they are and how much time they need before we can turn to an implementation phase. And during that, they're determining what data am I collecting? What am I analyzing to determine have we made the correct decision? Are we having the intended goal that we set out to have, and reflecting? And then year 3 is essentially kind of an extension of year 2 where that work just continues. It takes a little bit of time to be able to really be intentional with making these kinds of changes.
So to be clear then, Erica, we're just completing year 1.
Correct.
And it has been a slower year 1 than we had thought.
Yes.
Because we have had to limit some of the time because we've had COVID restrictions and so forth.
Go ahead.
So this is, you're doing essentially different departments or curricular areas together. So if I'm a US history teacher for junior year, and there are several other, or a couple of other US history teachers, so I might look at this from the perspective of my course and our, courses to see how we're doing. But then the department has to look at it as a whole department. And then how does that then relate to, if you're doing these groups in different years, how does that relate to the overall curricular goals and philosophy that you've set that everyone shares?
It's a great
It's a
question.
complicated process.
It is complicated. So in part, I'll share the next slide, which is, again, theoretically in my head, I think this is how this is going to work. We'll see when we get to year 2, when social studies and ELA are entering year 2, and my idea is that that's when the next set of departments begins their review cycle. So in part, to answer your question, there is a very intentional plan of how this cycle will work. So a department will work through it for 3 intentional years, take a pause, and then re-enter it at some point in the future. So I think that's part of your answer. To answer some of your other question, I think I'm going to,
Okay.
if you don't mind waiting just a
Fine, I
moment. Perfect.
At what point, how far into it do you have to get before you have legitimate, good measurable data as to how you're doing with this approach? Is it year 2, year 3, year 5?
My anticipation is by year 2 is when we'll start to really be able to have some data to look at those changes.
And will that be some of these testing things
We
with
will.
students that those would be the tools you would use to measure the success?
Correct, as well as local assessments.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Erica, thank you. Obviously, this requires teacher time and coordination and all of that. And it's also a repeated process over time. If you think on it over a decade, it helps to understand better the repeated cycle nature of what this is. So the amount of staff time in coordination, training, whatever adjective you care to use, does that interfere at this point in time with the progress you'd like to make?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question.
Is the staff available enough time to get the model implemented in an expected time framework?
Thank you. I think I understand now. So when we were first kind of thinking about where the time would come from, we had some ideas about how we would be creative with that. And it posed to be a little bit of a challenge. So the answer that I've given to those teachers multiple times this year is, and it will take longer. So this is the year that we have been brought to, and so in an ideal school year, we would have the ability to pull substitute teachers in for a day and be able to partner with them to be able to release the teachers from some instructional time or their planning time to be able to do this intentional work. We've been unable to do that this year with the shortage that we've had. So we've been extremely creative. In addition to that, our superintendent has approved some dynamic requests for additional time that the teachers have been willing to work to be able to complete the goal. And the teachers have been willing to repurpose some of their time to be able to dedicate it to this work.
And we've tried to prioritize, so we have 4 extended afternoons throughout the school year. We've tried to prioritize that time, as well as this is the first year. It was a new addition in the last contract, 2 collaborative plannings per month. And we have utilized that time to support this work. So we've tried to recognize that for the group that's up, how we prioritize other time. Time is our greatest challenge. There just isn't enough of it, and we want to limit how much we take from instructional time to do that. But that collaboration is critically important to make decisions that have significant implications. So it is a piece that I think we'll continue to try to see how we smooth it out.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. So I'm excited to share with you some kind of a little sneak peek into the work. So you get an example of some of the things that have come of this. So focus on social studies this evening. And one of the things that they were really excited to do, back to your question, is, as a lot of the teachers end up kind of being the U.S. History 1 teacher or the American and state government teacher. So they end up knowing their little silo extremely well. And so the first thing that the social studies department did is really just kind of expose that. They each went into a document and started to type away all of the historical timelines that they're focusing on, all of the world events that they're focusing on, and then they were able to look at that together to see where do we have a lot of overlap, as well as what do we have missing, and what do we think about those things, because those are extremely important. And so for the first time in a really long time, they were able to develop a really nice coherent from 7 through 12. What does that look like? What is the learner experience through the social studies department? And in that work, they uncovered some really important things. And one of them is they realized they spent an incredible amount of time on the ancient world and the 1600s through the 1900s. And so what this turns into are, action items, right? So back to that proposal idea, they're ending year 1. And so they're saying, we want to change this. We really want to look at that 9th grade experience, and we want to change that. We don't want to focus on ancient world any longer. We have so much overlap. Let's change that and make that become world studies. So rather than just being unsure about those modern day connections that students might make with historical events, they've decided they really want to be super intentional about what those connections are. So this is an extraction from their current proposal. Here's another example. So again, at 11th grade, and actually I have an email in my inbox saying, wait a minute, we have another idea. So this is a living and breathing work, but from their proposal, extracting this idea that, again, they want to shift some of that focus, and they want to bring forward more of the focus of present day historical events. So lots of other action items that have come from their work. I guess with that, I would also like to express gratitude to the board for the support to be able to engage in this important work. Again, I think this is among the most important decisions that we make in the school district for our learners. Through this cycle, our teachers are able to be really deeply reflective, and then also have an eye toward, what do we want to do with this information, and how do we improve student outcomes.
And to remind the board, last year at fund balance, you did approve some additional funds for our humanities curriculum development. So that helped to support the outside consultant working with the group.
So I guess the final thing that I'd like to share this evening, if you've not had a chance to explore the community area of the curriculum site, Mr. Parsons, do you mind supporting me with a click on a click here? Is
Sure,
that possible?
of course.
Thank you. I don't think my pointer has the capacity to.
See if, I didn't know if it would stream, but it looks like it is.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I can scroll as well.
If you could stay here just for a
Yep.
second, thank you. So this website is accessible by all of our community members. Everything that we do here is transparent and accessible. So I take a lot of pride in the resources that I've shared here. One of the first links here is that design principles document that the board approved in 2020, one of our cornerstone documents that really helps us to articulate what our philosophies are. And a video between myself and Mr. Bennett walking through kind of the key points of that. It's a long document and it is extremely wordy. So I think the interview approach between Mr. Bennett and I helps to kind of unpack the denseness of the document itself. If you don't mind scrolling. Thank you. And then down below that, there's a whole section here to support families to understand our grading and reporting practices. So again, there's an informational video and a number of brochures to help parents understand what the competencies are, as well as what are the grading scales that we're using for each grade level to support their learners. And then I'll just highlight one last area, if you don't mind, Mr. Parsons. Thank you. So all of our competencies are posted on this website as well. Each of those blue buttons represents a different content area. So with a click on any one of them, maybe you might choose English language arts, perhaps, right at the top, Mr. Parsons.
That is what I would
Perfect. So this is, our what? This is that 50% of those decisions that are made are living in this document here. So on the bottom of the document, you can see that it starts with kindergarten a few tabs over, and if Mr. Parsons were to continue clicking, it would go all the way to the high school programming up until the 12th grade. Yes, sir.
Last one. Erica, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm not, please. I heard you say that in part, this happens because of the time that teachers give beyond that time that they're contractually obligated.
So some of the time they have decided to work beyond their contracted time. Some of the time has been part of their contract.
I understand.
Yes,
I think that's important for the board to understand.
yes.
And some of that beyond contract time has been compensated at our $40 an hour.
I would assume, yes.
Yes. And some of them have chosen to do some summer work as well, which is sometimes a good opportunity for them to be able to be collaborative with one another without having, many other decisions looming over their heads, pulling them in other directions.
Yeah. Good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
So what I'm getting from this, that when you go through year one, course descriptions will be very fluid because as you described, the social studies they went through in their silos said, oh my gosh, we're missing subjects, we got too much overlap. How does that reflect in it? And I assume we should be coming up with the course descriptions, right, that we have to approve, right, for
So
next year and
the
all that?
program of studies, so
Yeah.
the course descriptions might change in
Yeah.
that document. And then it may be, again, it's a course, an existing course, but they're changing really the scope and sequence of that course.
Right, so how does that work so that the students know and we're relaying this information so that to the counselors, to the students, so they know where they're gonna be and if they're really interested in what's changing?
So there's
What
a
classes they want to
syllabus
take.
that would be created for those courses that would outline what will be taught during that course.
Okay,
And part of that is educating the guidance department to understand those changes. Like the ancient studies, guidance was very well versed that that's been an intense part of grade 9. And so
certainly having them have, build awareness is an important piece. It's a good point to make that, part of the communication of those changes is important.
Yeah, and just how fast it happens, right?
And then when the students go through their program of studies, their course selection, and feel free to chime in here. They have a whole process that they're supported through their office hours with their office hours teachers. So I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, and guidance is also very helpful with it too. I mean, if I've ever had a question, they're super receptive to me coming in. And it is most physically selected the courses is through OML, which all the students are familiar with. So it's very familiar to choose them. And program of studies, all the teachers, office hours teachers do go through the program of studies if they have questions about it. So
Yeah, I'm worried about, those families that have, kids that are 4 or 5 years apart. And, the first student goes through and this is what I took. And it's set in everybody's head, this is what you take at the school, right? And with the project like this, that doesn't get set. It becomes more fluid. And how we make sure that everybody's aware that these things are changing and it's not the same. Right?
And I do think that syllabus is an important component. I think that's, a kind of a transparent way with the student and families at the start that this is, we're going to be working on these areas, particularly in history. We're going to be looking from this point in time to this point in time. That helps to give a deeper understanding of what's expected. The competencies help to do that as well. And the I can statements associated with it. It's a complex process.
Yeah, no, and I gotta say, congratulate you and the teachers and the staff that are doing this, because it is, you're reimagining your business, right? And just trying to figure out the best way. So it's something that's good, you're self-evaluating and moving towards a better goal. So I congratulate you for that.
It definitely is quite an accomplishment. There are many districts who are still doing the work of the what. So important, I think, for you to also know kind of in terms of looking at our work and comparing that to many other districts. There are few that have a very coherent K-12 progression.
Why is that?
I think for many reasons. I think it's very difficult to find collaborative time between different schools, and the larger a school district becomes, I think the more complex that becomes to try to pull people together to do that work, because it is incredibly collaborative. Or sometimes what happens is it kind of it's not a collaborative process, and so it comes from a curriculum office and is kind of presented as here you are, and there's no collaboration and being involved in the process.
Gotcha.
So
Thank
people
you.
do it different ways.
That was great.
Yes, thanks for your time.
Thank you. That was
Appreciate it.
Informative.
Thank you.
Okay. Word letter email update, school student problem identification and resolution of issues together, the school spirit programs. Moriarty.
So the School Spirit program is being prepared, and Dr. Downing did meet with all students grades 7 through 12 just before April break to talk about the program and to get students to get interested in attending on the 21st. So I don't know what exactly our numbers are at this point, but I know that they have certainly been trying to have students better understand what the Spirit program is and what the hope is for the work, and trying to build up some interest. I don't know, Riley, if you have any updates from.
I mean, I've
Students?
definitely heard chatter among the students about it, and I know there are a lot of excited about the food and the incentives that she has for us. But
They will be well cared for.
yes, as a senior and what I see, I'm definitely comfortable that there's enough. From what I've heard, is that there's enough people to get a decent start on this project.
And we have community volunteers who have participated in the training and are primed and ready to
Did get them out for the.
We did, so, people have been very helpful.
We're
We did,
having trouble finding some.
when we did the ACERT training, one of the individuals who was there for that, is also a parent in Sandwich, We brought her right to Dr. Downing's office afterwards, and she willingly
Great.
signed up, and she's going to be an amazing facilitator. So
Great.
we're in good shape.
Okay. Correspondence, superintendent, board secretary, board members. Any old business? No. New business, should we do the donations first?
Certainly.
Okay. We have a donation of $1,000 from the town of Sandwich Children and Youth Education Fund for the Interlakes Middle/High School Band Student Activity Club Trip in May.
So moved.
Second.
With thanks.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
In the donation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have multiple.
Frank, where was that?
It was on our desk.
Oh, okay, got it. The second stack.
A, nomination of professional teaching staff for 2022-2023 school year.
You may want to do that.
I was gonna
speak
say-
in non-public and then come out. and
What do we do? Is everybody okay with that? Not public? Okay. And then non-resident tuition waiver in accordance with the professional employee agreement, Article 27.1.
So you have the letters from teachers regarding their children attending. And again, you can certainly speak about that in non-public or make your motion in public.
Does anybody want to make a motion or?
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I'll
second.
second that one.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Policy Review Committee minutes, April 12th, attachment number 7.
So moved. Second.
You don't need
You
to
don't read that,
approve
that's
those,
just an
it's more of an
informational item.
informational item.
Okay. You don't need to speak to these either, right? Unless you have questions.
If you have questions, happy to support answers.
Okay, no questions, I guess we'll go to B, first reading, action item, attachments 8 through 13. And there, a motion to approve the first reading of the following policies. We have 3323, bidding policy and procedures. However, I see below that we're not, what's happening with that?
We are, so this is bidding policy and procedure. Below, you're asked to rescind a policy that was a separate policy that was bidding
Okay.
procedures. We
Okay.
combined it into.
Okay, and then we have policy 3324, purchasing policy and procedures, 3610, administration of federal grants, 3610.1, allowability, policy 3610.3, procurement, and policy 3610.10, grant budget reconciliation.
I would make that motion. This is the business part of school. I did read through all of this.
Okay, is there a second? Is there any questions at all? Yes.
How many of these policy changes or inclusions result from the state or federal legislation?
So all of the DAFs are related to, they're responding to federal state law regarding our administration of federal grants. And the bidding policy and procedures, that was really us trying to combine to be more, actually, that did include also some changes to the procurement and so forth for bids. So it really is to, when we sign those federal assurances relative to meeting grant requirements, these changes are proposed to meet those.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of the first reading of the policy?
Aye.
Thank you.
Rescind action item, Mrs. Moriarty, attachment number 14. This is the third
Rescind.
policy 3323.1, bidding procedures as recommended.
So we're putting the procedures into the other policy.
Right, 3323, yes.
So we need a motion then?
So moved.
Second.
So was that Mark and then Craig?
Give it credit.
Okay, all those in favor of rescinding? Okay, additional business, members of the board, members of the administration. Last public input, do we have any public input?
Just refreshing the screen. Nope.
Okay, announcements. The first announcement, we're actually postponing and changing that date. So cross that out.
The May 11th date?
Yes,
Yes.
we're gonna change that date because we have board members, some board members that can't make that date.
And that's tomorrow. Yeah.
So
Are we gonna shoot for another Wednesday at this point? We know?
I don't know.
We can
We
certainly
need to
poll
take a
people. We
poll.
can poll people.
We'll find out. We'll send an email tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay. Tuesday, May 17th, SAU 2 board meeting at the Humiston Building in the conference room at 6 PM. Tuesday, May 24th, Interlake School Board at the Humiston Building conference room. There'll be a policy review committee at 5:30 and a regular school board meeting at 6 PM. Tuesday, June 14th, Interlake School Board at the Humiston Building conference room. There'll be a policy review committee at 5:30 and a regular school board meeting at 6 PM.
And as of this time, nothing in July.
At this time,
At
and
this
the board certainly can choose to.
Okay, so we're going into the non-public RSA 91A:3BC, the hiring of any person as a public employee in matters which is discussed in public would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of this board unless such person requests an open meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Alderman Paul,
Yes, please.
Ms. Merrill,
Yes.
Mr. Billings.
Yes.
Mr. Cunningham.
Yes.
Mr. Baker.
Yes.
Ms. Starmer.
Yes.
I also vote yes.
Okay. Thanks.